G'day there, Emil from Performance by Design with a session today. Very interesting one on the competition complex. One of the interesting things that we observe inside of the professional sports world are the 4 C's to high performing cultures. Okay, the intersection of these 4 wheels, if you will, coming together can create high performance inside of pro sports. And again, we'll always make that correlation from sport to corporate whenever possible. 4 factors. Care. Now this is in relation to individual care. Individual care for your performance and your respect to yourself in that one. When we think about compassion, we think about team. And we define compassion as empathy with action, the ability to feel another team member's pain and struggle a little bit, but reach out and take action to help them through that adversity to get to the other side. High care, individual care, high team compassion inside a great sporting and corporate teams, of course. Celebration. Great teams celebrate well. I just had a recent period of time in Toronto where I was lucky enough to see the Toronto Raptors win the NBA championship. The city stopped 3.5 million people for the parade. Not only does the team celebrate well, but the cities celebrate well, and we see that here in Australia as well. We celebrate as a team together and we enjoy that moment together in time. The interesting part about the competition complex is competition. Now, I'm not talking so much about external competition to your opponents on the field per se. I'm talking about internal. One of the interesting things inside of professional sports is if you do all of these things really well, you can lose your position on the team to a teammate. So internal competition is always apparent. We're always actually competing against a teammate to get a position on the field. Very interesting. I know that happens a little bit in the corporate space in the way of promotions, but think about it in pro sport, it's happening all the time. So to be a great team member, you've got to care for your own performance, you've got to show compassion for your teammates, you've got to celebrate together, but at the end of the day, if I do that really well to my teammate, I may not get a position on the field. So let's have a bit of a chat about developing an internal competition. A couple of good stories for you. In sport, the San Antonio Spurs in the NBA, categorically one of the greatest teams of all time through the 2000s, won 5 championships in about 13 or 14 years, had a fantastic free throw percentage up in the high 80s over that period. In 2012, the Hawthorn Hawks in the Australian Football League lost the grand final of the Sydney Swans to poor kicking. Alistair Clarkson looked around the world and said, who has the best accuracy in shooting in the world, and saw the Spurs. Different sport altogether, but looked at that percentage. Went over and realised that internally after every training session, all players had to shoot 25 free throws. They then tracked that number internally on a scoreboard for all to see. So not only did he create the game-like atmosphere for the shoot, but internally we could see where we placed against our teammates. So that internal competition drove performance. Fantastic story, I love that one. Now, the corporate space, I have a great little company I worked for many years ago that realised they sold programs to schools and principals, and they realised that their salespeople would sell in different parts of the city, but sometimes you would have to go and help a mate out. So instead of having individual commissions based on their own performance to chop each other out sometimes, they realised they're better off just accumulating all the money and all the commissions and splitting it as a team, okay? Now what they did though, outside of that, they still had a weekly competition. So there was still a prize for who sold the most that week, but when they won all together. The individual still got a bit of a prize, a pretty funky visor, pretty funny crew there, but that little tweak to the system really upped that internal competition, which helps us be better together, okay? Because we are smarter and stronger together, we know that. So the question for you today is, have you set up your corporate team to promote healthy internal competition, much like the San Antonio Spurs and the Hawks and the great team at X Movement there in Canada? My name's Emil Studham, Performance by Design.